Okay, guys, this is just a little bit of a follow-up to the ADHD stream that I did a couple days ago. The plan was to do ADHD and bipolar since they do tend to be um, diagnosed together or oftentimes are misdiagnosed as potentially the others simply because a lot of their symptoms kind of look alike or they mimic each other. So I just kind of wanted to go over the actual diagnostic criteria for those two conditions. This is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. This is the fifth edition. A revised version just came out. Within the last year, if memory serves. They're still really expensive, so I have not bought the new version. But there are no changes in these two particular disorders from this version versus the revised version that would have any impact on this video. This is for educational purposes only. It's just to kind of give people an idea of what these disorders how these disorders present themselves, and how they're diagnosed when somebody goes in to have a mental health evaluation done, what the provider is looking for in reaching that diagnosis. Now, I had them pages bookmarked, but I took the bookmark out when I tried to photocopy them for my video. And I forgot to put them back in. So, I know they're toward the front. Let me see if I can just flip through and find them. Communication disorder. Huh, I'm going to have to look at that one. Intellectual. Let's see. So bipolar 123, and I think ADHD was on like page 56 or something like that. I know it's toward the front. Oh, 59, I was close. So I realize you're not going to be able to see this because it's very small and I can't get the camera any closer. So I will just sit down and read these to you as we go. So this part over here, attention deficit / hyperactivity disorder. Abnormalities of attention, overly focused or easily distracted, are common in individuals with autism spectrum disorder, as is hyperactivity. A diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, should be considered when attentional difficulties or hyperactivity exceeds that typically seen in individuals of comparable mental age. So this is just kind of the brief description of the DSM on what ADHD is. So I'll start going over the diagnostic criteria. A persistent pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity / impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development, as characterized by 1 and or 2. So number 1, inattention. 6 or more of the following symptoms have persisted for at least 6 months to a degree that is inconsistent with developmental level and that negatively impacts directly on social and academic / occupational activities. Note, the symptoms are not solely a manifestation of oppositional behavior, defiance, hostility, or failure to understand tasks or instructions. For older adolescents and adults age 17 or older, at least 5 of these symptoms are required. A. often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes in schoolwork, at work, or during other activities. For example, overlooks or misses details, work is inaccurate. B, often has difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or play activities. Example, has difficulty remaining focused during lectures, conversations, or lengthy reading. C, often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Example, mind seems elsewhere, even in the absence of an obvious distraction. D, often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace. Making sure I'm within my frame here. Where is it? For example, starts tasks but quickly loses focus and is easily sidetracked. E, often has difficulty organizing tasks and activities, difficulty managing sequential tasks, difficulty keeping materials and belongings in order, messy, disorganized work, has poor time management, fails to meet deadlines. Often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort. Example, schoolwork or homework. For older adolescents and adults, preparing reports, completing forms, reviewing lengthy papers. G, often loses things necessary for tasks or activities. Example, school materials, pencils, books, tools, wallet, keys, paperwork, glasses, mobile phones. H, is often easily distracted by extraneous stimuli. So that's stuff on the outside. For older adolescents and adults, may include unrelated thoughts. So that's those, intrusive thoughts. I, is often forgettable in daily activities. Example, doing chores, running errands. For older adolescents and adults, returning phone calls, paying bills, keeping appointments. So that's the inattentive part of ADHD. Now is the hyperactivity and impulsivity. So remember, to be diagnosed with ADHD, you have to have 5 minimum within the inattention category to be just straight ADHD without the hyperactivity. To be ADHD, you have to have 5 inattentive and 6 or more of the hyperactivity. So hyperactivity and impulsivity. 6 or more of the following symptoms have persisted for at least 6 months to a degree that is inconsistent with developmental level and the negatively impacts directly on social, academic, and occupational activities. Note, the symptoms are not solely a manifestation of oppositional behavior, defiance, hostility, or a failure to understand tasks or instructions. For older adolescents and adults, only 5 of these are required. So in young children, it's 6. In adolescents or adults, it's only 5. A, often fidgets with or taps hands or feet or squirms in their seat. B, often leaves their seat in situations when remaining seated is expected. Example, leaves his or place in the classroom, in the office, or in the workplace, or in other situations that require remaining in place. C, often runs about or climbs in situations where it's inappropriate. Note, in adolescents or adults, may be limited to just feeling restless. D, often unable to play or engage in leisure activities quietly. E, is often on the go, acting as if driven by a motor. Example, is unable to be or uncomfortable being still for an extended time, as in restaurants, meetings, may be experienced by others as being restless or difficult to keep up with. F, often talks excessively. G, often blurts out an answer before a question has been completed. Example, completes people's sentences, cannot wait for a turn in conversation. H, often has difficulty waiting his or her turn. Example, like waiting in a line. And I, often interrupts or intrudes on others. Example, butts into conversations, games, or activities. May start using other people's things without asking or receiving permission. For adolescents and adults, may intrude into or take over what others are doing. So if you remember, go back here, it gives you A. These are the additional criteria. B, several inattentive or hyperactive impulsive symptoms were present prior to age 12. Several inattentive or hyperactive impulsive behaviors are present in 2 or more settings. Oh, that would be C. I was covering that up, sorry. Several inattentive or hyperactive impulsive symptoms are present in 2 or more settings. Example, home, school, or work, with friends or relatives, and in other activities. So it can't just be like when you're at school, or it can't just be at home, because then you have to look at the authority figure as the potential catalyst to the behavior rather than the person. D, there is clear evidence that the symptoms interfere with or reduce the quality of social, academic, and occupational functioning. And E, the symptoms do not occur exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders and are not better explained by another mental health disorder, like mood disorder, anxiety, dissociative disorder, personality disorders, or substance intoxication or withdrawal. Now, there are specifiers for ADHD. So you have to specify whether it's a combined presentation. So you have to specify whether it's ADD or ADHD. So do you meet just one or just A, or do you meet A and B? Predominantly inattentive or predominantly hyperactive. And then you have additional specifiers of mild, moderate, severe. And that's based upon how many symptoms are actually present. So mild, you might have the bare minimum to meet criteria. Moderate is middle of the road, and severe, you essentially meet all of the criteria or close to it. And then partial remission is when you no longer meet the diagnostic criteria for a minimum of 6 months. Well, I take that back. The past 6 months, the most recent 6 months. As an ADHD person myself, I can't imagine going 6 months without being completely symptom free. That seems very odd to me. Like, how is that even possible? So I'll just relate back to me in the criteria that I meet as an ADHD adult. Section A, inattention. So I'm 1B. I have difficulty sustaining attention. C, I have difficulty listening when I'm spoken to directly. That's why I constantly fidget. That's part of my hyperactivity, my section B. It has difficulty following through, finishing work. I have a bazillion different projects going at all times. Difficulty organizing tasks and activities. Oh my Lord, if I gave you a scan just of the room I'm sitting in right now, it's a little chaotic. I have some E with F, avoiding, disliking, or being reluctant to engage in activities that require sustained mental concentration. That is one of my criteria that is checked off on my evaluation. And I don't know if I disagree with that simply because I've adapted to that by having so many different projects going at a time that I don't have to concentrate for a long period of time. Because when I get bored, I can just switch to something else. Or if it's just not a true criteria for me. I tend to think it's more of one than two. Like, I've just learned to adapt to that. And I know that if I have to focus on something for too long, I'm not going to be able to unless I'm fidgeting and forcing my brain to be super overstimulated. But yeah, if there's something that I'm not allowed to do that, like long, meetings when I was working, and we'd have these meetings that were 2 or 3 hours long. If I knew that I was not going to be able to take something in to fidget with, or, it was not acceptable for me to take in a pad of paper and a pencil to sit and doodle on, that I was going to really struggle with that meeting. I'm constantly losing stuff. I mean, it's not unheard of for me to be on my phone trying to use my phone to find my phone. Or losing my glasses on my head. And I realize that I'm not alone in that. People do that all the time. But it's almost an hourly thing for me that I'm losing something. I lose the TV remote. I mean, my last cross stitch project it only took me about 10 days to stitch it, and I lost 4 needles in those 10 days. So I'm constantly losing stuff. I put it down and then I don't know where it is. It's just gone. Being distracted by external stimuli. Again, that is one of the criteria that was checked off on my evaluation. And I think that's a double-edged sword, because I do need the external stimuli to keep myself focused. That's why a lot of times I'll have when I'm cross stitching, I'll have a movie playing and I'll have the radio on at the same time, and I'm doing a bazillion different things because it keeps my brain focused, oddly enough. However, I am very easily distractible, and so it's that squirrel. I mean, people joke about that all the time, and that has kind of become my personal saying too. It's like I'll be halfway through a sentence and then I'm like, whoa, whoop, 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 and I'm off onto some other tangent, and then I'm lost. I can't even remember what I was talking about before I was squirreled. So it's kind of it's challenging, to say the least. And then forgetful on daily activities. I'm horrible, about remembering to do just the simplest of things. I have to I have to make a checklist every single morning of things I need to do that day, or I'll get to the end of the day and hardly any of it, if any at all, gets done, because I just forget. And for people that are not ADHD, it's hard for them to understand, how do you forget that you need to do the dishes? Or how do you forget that you need to do a load of laundry? It's just the way the ADHD brain is. I walk into the kitchen, go, oh, I still need to load the dishwasher. Well, somewhere in between the microwave and the stove to go load the dishwasher, squirrel. And then suddenly I'm in the bathroom doing something completely different. And I forget all about the fact that I still need to load the dishwasher until the next time I walk into the kitchen or through the kitchen. And then between the entry and the sink, squirrel. And I'm off feeding my bearded dragons. So it's just the way it is. And most people, at least in my experience, people that have ADHD have to have some sort of checklist or calendar of events or something just to keep themselves on track, so that periodically throughout the day, they can go back and check the list and be like, okay, yep, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to get done. I have daily checklists, and then I have weekly checklists, because some stuff has to be done, but it doesn't have to be done today. It just has to be done this week. So I actually have 2 lists that I operate out of. So moving on to hyperactivity and impulsivity. Again, these are my diagnostic criteria that I met on my evaluation. Often fidgeting with or taps hands, feet, squirms in their seat. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll see that I'm constantly moving. I'm swinging back and forth in my chair. I'm, fiddling with my fingers. Sometimes I'll have a pen in my hand and I'm click, 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 click. I'm constantly moving, constantly. Leaving seats in situations when remaining seated is expected. Never had to worry about that. I think my desire, I don't know if that's the right word, but to be socially acceptable keeps my butt in my seat. Now, that might have been different when I was a kid. I don't really know. I don't have any memories of my childhood. And that's a subject for another live. So I don't know how I was as a kid. But some of these symptoms had to have been present as a child in order for me to be diagnosed as an adult. You don't just develop it as an adult. Usually what it is the symptoms are present there as a kid, and you have a period almost of, I guess in a way it would be that remission that I was talking about earlier, where you just have learned to work within your brain, how your brain works, how you're going to function, what makes you successful. And then somehow or another, all of that reactivates as an adult, and then suddenly you're just like you were when you were a kid. So these had to have been present when I was a child. I have no memory of that. So runs about or climbs in situations where it's inappropriate. Again, don't really have that, but it does note that for adults, it could be just simply being restless, which I definitely identify myself as being restless. I can't, like I said, I can't, unless I'm in a situation where not being seated is unacceptable, I don't sit still. I'm constantly moving. Play or engage in leisure activities quietly. Again, even when I'm doing something that most people do to relax their brain and kind of take themselves out of the situation, I've got, like I said, the TV is on. A lot of times I'll have like the TV, there's a movie on the TV, there's music playing on the radio, I'll have YouTube playing on my phone, and I'm sitting and cross-stitching. When I was a student, same thing. I would be sitting there with my laptop in my lap, researching my paper and writing my paper. I'd have the phone playing music. There'd be a movie on the TV, and I'd have some sort of craft project, and I would just be bouncing between all of them. And somehow or another, I always managed to get my papers written that weren't started until the night before, because I can't commit to actually doing things, and I can't remember that I need to do things. And I would bang out a paper and always get really good grades. So, often on the go, acts as if driven by a motor. Again, can't sit still. Talks excessively. If you listen to my ADHD live, you'll know that is actually what got me to go get tested as an adult. Because I couldn't stop talking, and my friend, jokingly, she was joking, but she threatened to pull over and kick me out of the car if I didn't shut up. Often blurts out an answer before a question. No, because my my training for my degree has taught me how to listen effectively. So I listen to hear, I don't listen to respond. However, I do struggle with interrupting people or talking over people. And again, people do that people do that. But people with ADHD do it uncontrollably. And oftentimes we don't even realize that what we're doing is not something we're doing consciously. I can wait in a line. I'm not patient about it, but it's not like I'm trying to jump a line. And people can do their own thing. I'm not worried about trying to fix their stuff or finish their projects. I'll offer my assistance, and if they say, no, I got it, I'm good. I don't have to force that issue. So I am ADHD. My daughter is ADHD, and my son, I believe, is just straight ADD. I'd have to clarify that with him, but I don't believe he has the hyperactivity diagnosis. I think he's just straight ADD. But that's ADHD in a nutshell. So I will move on to bipolar disorder. What did I say? Page 123. Oh, see, there's that memory thing. Oh, but look, I was right. So there are two types of bipolar disorder. There's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 has manic and hypomanic states and may also have depression, but it's not a requirement for bipolar 1. Bipolar 2, you have both. You have those highs and you have those lows. You have the high manic and then the low depressions. So I'll read up here. Bipolar 1 disorder criteria represent the modern understanding of the classic manic depressive disorder or affective psychosis described in the 19th century, differing from that classic description only to the extent that neither psychosis nor the lifetime experience of major depressive episode is a requirement. So depression is not a requirement for bipolar 1. However, the vast majority of individuals whose symptoms meet the criteria for a fully syndromal manic episode also experience major depressive episodes during the course of their lifetime. That's intermittent bouts of depression, but not a lifetime of chronic depression or episodic patternized depression. Bipolar 2 disorder requiring the lifetime experience of at least one episode of major depression and at least one hypomanic episode is no longer thought to be a milder condition than bipolar 1, largely because of the amount of time individuals with this condition spend in depression and because the instability of mood experienced by individuals with bipolar 2 is typically accompanied by serious impairment in work and social functioning. There are some specifiers. So there's cyclothymic. Let me jump back real quick. Where are we? Where are we? Where's our specifiers? So I'm less familiar with the mental health side of this book because I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, so it takes me a little bit to... Oh, they're right here in front of my face. Again, squirrel. So you do have to specify if they have bipolar with anxious distress, with mixed features, with rapid cycling, with melancholic features. So that's just nothing makes me happy. Atypical features, mood congruent psychotic features, mood incongruent psychotic features, catatonia, peripartum onset, so bipolar appearing during pregnancy, and then seasonal pattern bipolar disorder. So those are way further up in the book, which we can kind of get to a little bit depending on how long this video ends up being. So bipolar 1 disorder, for that diagnosis, it is necessary to meet the following criteria for a manic episode. The manic episode may be preceded by and may be followed by hypomanic or a major depressive disorder. So for bipolar 1 disorder diagnosis, again, you got to remember, you have to have at least one manic episode, and that one manic episode must it piggybacks with either a hypomanic state or a depression state. But remember, for this, depression is not a requirement to be diagnosed with bipolar 1. So what constitutes a manic episode? So there's A, B, C, and D, and then B has 7 criteria attached. So A, a distinct period of abnormally or persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood, and abnormally or persistently increased goal-directed activity or energy, lasting at least 1 week and present most of the day, nearly every day, or any duration if hospitalized. B, during the period of mood disturbance and increased energy or activity, 3 or more of the following symptoms, 4, if the mood is only irritable, are present to a significant degree and represent a noticeable change from usual behavior. 1, inflated self-esteem or grandiosity. 2, decreased need for sleep. Feels rested after only 3 hours, for example. 3, more talkative than usual or pressure to keep talking. 4, flight of ideas or subjective experience that thoughts are racing. 5, distractibility, attention too easily drawn to unimportant or irrelevant external stimuli as reported or observed. 6, increase in goal-directed activity, either socially, at work, school, or sexually, or psychomotor agitation, purposeless non-goal directed activity. 7, excessive involvement in activities that have a high potential for painful consequences, like engaging in unrestrained buying sprees, sexual indiscretions, or foolish business investments. C, the mood disturbance is sufficiently severe to cause marked impairment in social and occupational functioning, or is to necessitate hospitalization to prevent harm to self or others, or there are psychotic features. And D, the episode is not attributable to the psychological effects of a substance, whether illicit or prescribed medications, or to any other medical condition. It does give a disclaimer here about if a manic episode occurs during an antidepressant treatment, but persists at a fully syndromal level beyond the psychological effect of that treatment, it is sufficient evidence for a manic episode. Therefore, a bipolar 1 diagnosis is recommended. Criteria A through D constitute a manic episode. At least one lifetime manic episode is required for the diagnosis of bipolar 1. So a hypomanic episode has A through F, and then B has 7 criteria, which is all, some of them are repeats for a manic episode. 5. Distractibility, 6. Okay, those 7 are the exact same. But the other stuff is the timeline for a hypomanic, I believe, is a little different. But so A, a distinct period of abnormally or persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood, and abnormally and persistently increased activity or energy, lasting at least 4 consecutive days, present most of the day, and nearly every day. During the period of mood disturbance and increased energy or activity, 3 or more of the following symptoms, 4 if the mood is only irritable, have persisted, represent a noticeable change from usual behavior, and have been present to a significant degree. So that's the difference from manic. They have to be there to a significant degree. So C, the episode is associated with an unequivocal change in functioning that is uncharacteristic of the individual when not symptomatic. So when they're not in a hypomanic state, you're not seeing these 7 criteria. They're behaving just like everybody else. The disturbance in mood and the change in functioning are observable by others. So that's interesting because that's different from manic. For hypomanic, somebody else has to be able to notice that you're behaving differently. The episode is not severe enough to cause marked impairment in social or occupational functioning or to necessitate hospitalization. If there are psychotic features, the episode is, by definition, manic. And F, the episode is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance, whether illicit or prescribed medications. A full hypomanic episode that emerges during antidepressant treatment but persists is sufficient evidence for a hypomanic episode diagnosis. However, caution is indicated that 1 or 2 symptoms, particularly increased irritability, edginess, and agitation following antidepressant use, are not taken as sufficient for diagnosis of a hypomanic episode, nor necessarily indicative of a bipolar diathesis. Sorry, I had to turn my heater down. And then major depressive episode. There are A, B, C, and A has 9 different criteria. So A, 5 or more of the following symptoms have been present during the same 2-week period and represent a change from previous functioning. At least one of the symptoms is either depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure. And it's for a 2-week period, minimum 2-week period. Do not include symptoms that are clearly attributable to another medical condition. So 1, depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by either subjective report, feeling sad, empty, or hopeless, or observation made by others. They're always tearful, for example. In children and adolescents, this can be irritable mood. 2, markedly diminished interest in pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by either subjective account or external observation. 3, significant weight loss when not dieting or weight gain, change of more than 5% of body weight in a month, or decreased or increase in appetite nearly every day. Note, in children, consider failure to make expected weight gain as a criteria. 4, insomnia or hypersomnia nearly every day. 5, psychomotor agitation or retardation nearly every day, observable by others, not merely subjective feelings of restlessness or being slowed down. So I'm going to jump over to, where is it on psychomotor here? Manic, 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 manic. Destructibility, goal-oriented. This is hypomanic. Where's the part on depression? I'll specify, let's go jump to 149 real quick. I just want to give some clarification on what they're talking about when they're talking about that psychomotor. So it's the third one. Oh, did I go too far? So as you can see, bipolar disorder actually appears in two separate parts of the DSM. That should give you at least some idea as to how complicated this disorder is to not only diagnose, but, you know, to treat. I'm not finding what I'm looking for. Well, I don't want to hold you guys up. So if you really want some more information on the psychomotor agitation or retardation, you can look that up. But basically it's, you know, that I can't move. I don't want to get up. I can't get up and shower. I just can't. I can't move. Fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. 6, feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt, which may be delusional, nearly every day, and not merely self-reproach or guilt about being sick. 8, diminished ability to think or concentrate, indecisiveness, nearly every day, either by subjective account or by observed by others. And 9, recurrent thoughts of death, not just a fear of dying, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan or a suicide attempt or a specific plan for committing suicide. And then B, the symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. And C, it is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or another medical condition. So that's bipolar 1. And again, they have these specifiers that go along with it. There's a lot of information for those specifiers. It doesn't change the fact that you're a bipolar diagnosis. It just means that you have bipolar with anxiety. You have rapid cycling, which means rather than having one manic episode a year, you might have 4. It just, you're changing between manic, hypomanic, normal, manic, hypomanic, normal much more quickly than not. You know, again, melancholic features, you know, do you have bipolar disorder, not depression, but you still don't have a joy in life. You're just kind of blah, you know. So if there's interest in me going over those specifiers, please say so in the comments, and I will do a follow-up video specifically going over these specifiers. If not, I won't worry about it, and I'll let you guys look it up on your own. So bipolar 2 is very similar in nature, except you have, instead of having a manic hypomanic state, in order to be bipolar 2, you are hypomanic plus depression. You bounce. Boom. Hypomanic depression, hypomanic depression, hypomanic depression. And very rarely are you in a quote unquote normal state. You're either manic or you're depressed. So the hypomanic, all the criteria are the same as we talked about in bipolar 1. And all the depressive episodes are the same as we talked about in bipolar 1. Like I said, the only difference really is that with bipolar 2, you don't have anything that meets full-on manic states, and depression is a requirement. If you are not experiencing depression that is not associated to other situations, then you cannot be diagnosed bipolar 2 without the depression. Unequivocal change. So these are all the same. Episode is not severe enough to cause impairment. So again, remember, hypomanic is a manic state minus psychosis. Manic is psychosis, or needing hospitalization. So if you're not having delusions, hallucinations, you're not having psychotic episodes, you are only hypomanic and are probably not likely to be bipolar 1. Now, the thing with depression too is a lot of people they experience some level of depression and don't ever realize it until something major happens, and then they are like full on depressed and then get the diagnosis. So I do kind of want to go over those 9 again, and I just want you guys to think about, put yourselves in these criteria and think about whether there's ever been a time in your life where you're like, wow, yeah, I kind of did feel that way, but I don't really think I was depressed. Because depression is like that. People just think, oh, it's just a little bit sad, I was having a rough time, or I was having a bad day. Well, it's easy to think it was just a bad day when you don't think about it in a big picture. When you think about it, how many bad days in a row did you actually have? Versus, oh, I was having a bad day, or it was just a rough spot. So again, depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day. Feeling sad, empty, or hopeless. Your friends telling you you're crying all the time. Your friends telling you they're worried about you because you just don't seem yourself. Diminished interest and pleasure in anything. You just don't want to do anything. Nothing makes you happy. Nothing makes you smile. Not even chocolate or ice cream. They can't make you smile if they normally do. Something to look out for. Significant changes in your weight, either positive or negative. You can't sleep. Suddenly, you've never had insomnia before in your life. And suddenly you can't sleep. That psychomotor agitation, you're just, or retardation. You either can't stop moving or you can't move at all. That's that psychomotor retardation. You have no motivation whatsoever to move. You just don't. Fatigue or loss of energy, feeling worthless or excessive, inappropriate guilt and not about life's experiences necessarily. It's more about, you start feeling guilty because you're not getting out of bed, because you're not getting up and doing doing your normal chores. You're not getting up and really taking care of your hygiene. You're not getting out. You're not going out to lunch with your friends anymore. And you start feeling bad that, you are isolating yourself in a way but you don't know why. All you know is, I just don't feel like it. I don't feel up to it. And then you start feeling bad about that. And that it furthers that cycle of into depression, unfortunately. Decreased ability to think or concentrate. You kind of become wishy-washy, indecisive. I can't really, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. Do you want a drink? I don't know. Would you like water or soda? I don't know. I don't know. And then suddenly having recurrent thoughts of death, suicide, suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, where they've never been present before. I would hope that even if somebody is not identifying it as depression, that if suddenly you were having thoughts of self-harm, that would be enough to take you to a doctor and get something figured out, because it boggles my mind to think that somebody could experience that and not be scared shitless if it's never happened before. I know it did me the first time my thoughts came in that, well, I shouldn't say the first time, the second time, because my first time was over my dad's death. But the first time that the thoughts just kind of like came out of nowhere and blindsided me, it scared the hell out of me, because I mean, everything, I had just had a baby and everything was going good. I was, was doing all my normal stuff, but I kept having these intrusive thoughts coming in that, the world would be better without me and I should just take my own life. And it was like, and I couldn't stop the thoughts from coming in. And that was my first diagnosis. That was the first time I was ever diagnosed with depression, and it actually was postpartum depression, to be specific. But it scared the hell out of me. But had I not experienced that symptom, I probably would not have gone to the doctor at that time, because I didn't recognize that I was experiencing postpartum depression. So, just something to keep in mind. So again, bipolar 2 has those specifiers. Same, similar, yeah, all the same ones. So again, just leave in the comments if you would like me to go over these specifiers in a separate video, and I will be absolutely willing to do that. Again, like I said, I am not a mental health professional. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. So I can give you lots of information and resources about substance use, not so much on mental health. I do have this resource, so any mental health condition that you would like to know what the diagnostic criteria are, let me know, and I can get that information out. But I can't diagnose. Please don't diagnose yourself. If some of these symptoms kind of resonated for you, but you don't have that diagnosis, please go talk to your doctor. But my goal in doing this video was just to give some insight into what the professionals look for when they are evaluating somebody for these disorders, and hopefully create a level of understanding when you are in any kind of relationship, whether it's a friendship, it's an association, a coworker situation, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, son, daughter, whatever, that hopefully this gives a little bit of insight into what that person is experiencing that is out of their control. They're not making conscious decisions to meet this criteria. It is just the way their brain chemistry is operating. And medications help stabilize that brain chemistry, but there's still a lot of behavioral stuff that can't be fixed through chemistry. It's cognitive behavioral therapy, it's motivational interviewing, it's rational emotive behavioral therapy, it's different therapeutic modalities to help address the behavioral components that come along with these disorders. And that's why I always, if you have to take a medication to fix yourself, even if it's only temporary, if it's a Band-Aid,
you've got to do therapy along with it so that you learn the coping skills for the behavior piece of these disorders. Because at the end of the day, no medication is going to fully fix the situation. You've got to learn how to adapt yourself in order to function within your own skin. But again, that's my opinion, and that's my opinion as an ADHD person and how I've had to adapt in order to be able to just get through daily life. So I hope you liked this video. Please like if you did, or dislike if you didn't. Again, if you would like me to do a separate video on those bipolar specifiers, please say so in the comments. And I will be sure to get that video recorded and uploaded. And again, any other mental health disorders or anything like that you're interested in what the criteria is, or what, let me know again in the comments, and I will shoot out a video for it. Other than that, I'm going to end this video and start getting it processed. Thank you for watching. Again, hit that like or the dislike depending on your opinion of this video, and the notification bell so you get the alerts when I do put videos out. I do tend to do a lot of pre-recorded ones for now, so you won't necessarily get the live notification, except for when I do go live. But hit the notification bell so at least you know when I have some pre-recordeds coming out as well. So thank you again for watching, and you guys have yourself a good day. Oh, see, I stand up to turn my camera off, and I realize I'm been totally crooked this whole time. Sorry. Not re-recording though. Bye.